the bleakest place on earth, the environment most devoid of creativity and imagination and hope and joy. Hello and welcome back to Just Another Football Podcast. Harry, what are we doing to ourselves? Us drawing, Villa drawing, giving Man City away back in. What are we doing to ourselves?
Man City had a great weekend, didn't they? Went off, won the Club World Cup.
Of course.
And all the results conspired to go their way this weekend. It's been weird the last few weekends. It's sort of like the last weekend was us, and then the weekend before that was Liverpool, and then this weekend it's Man City when they've not even played. Like, swings and roundabouts at the minute. You could say Spurs had a good weekend as well if you sort of consider them somewhat serious. Listen, I think Aston Villa, you mentioned, would probably have had probably about it. They've had the worst result if you want to consider them kind of in the mix.
Yeah.
And obviously Liverpool and Arsenal played out a draw, which helps Man City more than it helps probably either of those two clubs. But equally, there was nothing disgraceful about the game. I thought it was a high quality game, even though it wasn't sort of like there wasn't loads of maybe clear-cut chances. Neither keeper made loads of saves. Like, it wasn't, full of like action and memorable moments. But I think it's one of those, if you were sort of to sit down and watch it analytically, there was a lot of quality tactically. And there's a lot of things you probably pick up on watching it back. But I think ultimately you saw why both teams have, had good seasons to date. Obviously, Liverpool only lost one game. We've lost two. Neither team's going to be that unhappy with it, I don't think. You can't be. Because it's so, again, you're not even halfway through the season yet. So, so much football left to be played. I think, certainly for me, whenever we go to Anfield and don't lose, I'm pretty content with it. So, it's what it is. A lot to sort of get into, I suppose, and unpack. But initial thoughts. What is it? 2 hours since the game finished.
Yep.
Content with it. Certainly not spoilt my Christmas. Let's put it that way.
I'm not upset either. This is a huge improvement, obviously, from the Man United performance. Good God, definitely is. We're gonna, of course, talk about Liverpool, Arsenal as the main topic today. It's going to be a shorter one, and it's also the last podcast before the holidays, Christmas and the New Year. So if you're celebrating, happy holidays, and we'll rattle through a lot of funny stuff happened today. It was some funny results in there. Nottingham Forest losing in the last second to a Dominic Solanke hat-trick. West Ham winning against Man United, who have now lost actually 50% of their games in all competitions this season, and really winning away at Fulham. So we'll give those a mention, of course. But Liverpool Arsenal, of course, is the JAFP derby. I'm a Liverpool fan. He's an Arsenal fan, of course. And that was one of 3 games I think we play against each other inside 2 months. One of them is going to be an FA Cup very soon, and then the return fixture at the Emirates is coming up. But if all 3 games are going to be this quality, I look forward to them. But my God, Arsenal, I think they showed a lot of kind of character today in terms of their grit in a title run. Your center half partnership is scary, Harry. Talk to me about Saliba
they're very good.
And Gabriel.
They're very good. They're very good, and it's important to mention the fact that it is a partnership, and I think Saliba gets a lot of the credit because he just aesthetically on the eye does a lot of good stuff, right? And he's sort of only had one full season. This is his second, so there's sort of that kind of like shiny new toy syndrome, both within the Arsenal fan base and kind of within the media. Yeah. And a lot of it's warranted. Like, he's just a top player, but they work really well as a partnership. And I think it's probably similarly with Liverpool, where you've got, when he plays, Konate sort of is a bit more kind of aggressive and snaps into people and gets out and he's proactive. And then you've got Van Dijk, who kind of is a bit more, pragmatic and reserved in his defending style, which is sort of similar to Saliba, but again, just really easy on the eye. And I think that, like, that balance, combined with Declan Rice in front, it's a big reason why we're as defensively kind of solid as we are, is like that combination. So I thought, actually, watching that game today, the 4 players that come out of the game with the most credit on sort of either side of the 4 centre halves. I thought that the defending kind of on both sides really was like very good. And you can see why both teams have, the joint best record in the league defensively, because the centre backs don't make many mistakes. They defend difficult sort of transitions and situations very well. They sort of play the odds with the way that they basically force attackers into executing, the lowest percentage stuff basically. And I think it sounds quite basic, but it isn't. It's just really good. Like they're the best part of our team certainly at the minute. The centre backs plus Declan Rice. And in a game like that, which we drew at Liverpool last season, but it was a very sort of different feel to it, where we played some great stuff in the first half, or first, call it half an hour, but then just totally lost control of the game. And Liverpool could have scored 5 or 6 in that game. Really, looking back,
should have won it.
They
really
peppered the goal. Like this, the second half, and it was similar in this one, like where Liverpool had a 15-minute spell, sort of minutes 46 to 60, where they sort of really stepped on. Yeah. And we were making our own problems, trying to sort of play short passes and dribble the ball out. And I don't think the pitch was helping, which we might get into in a bit.
We will.
Yeah. But like, it was a similar feel to it. But I think in this one, the difference was you had Saliba instead of Rob Holding, which I think just speaks for itself.
Oh, yeah.
And you had Declan Rice instead of Thomas Partey, who's a good player. But like, I've noticed in games where we start to lose control, he doesn't do the sort of basic things to take the sting out of it nearly as well as someone like Rice or someone like Rodri, like where they just understand the sort of tempo that you need to then sort of slow the game down to, both in and out of possession, winning the ball back quickly and then not trying to pass it too quickly, sort of playing the short, like the right short passes, not playing it into dangerous areas. Like, again, all sounds quite basic, but he was sort of a big part of how we're able to turn the momentum, as well as the fact that I think Liverpool played in midweek, which took a little bit out of them. I think they just couldn't maintain the intensity they were playing at. Obviously, made the subs, brought three subs on, which I don't, it changed the balance of the team, and I don't think for the better.
Not at all.
And it's probably similar with us at the minute, where when we make subs, I'm not convinced that they yet we don't end the game with a better 11 on the pitch, or sort of a better balance to it, even though you get fresher players. They're different players, they're different profiles, and people that, you're not going to get exactly like for like replacements, but they don't offer the same kind of qualities. So I think, like, going back to sort of the centre halves and what you started the conversation with, I mean, they basically allowed us to, in a difficult period of the game, stand firm and sort of change turn the tide. Because I thought last 20-25 minutes, we got in some good areas and a little bit more quality in and around the box, just sort of some better decision making. And I think there was a goal there for us. But it was a relief to me that we ended the game in that fashion, rather than sort of trying to defend our own goal in front of the cop end, which it's just a situation you don't want to find yourselves in, and it was obviously one we found ourselves in the game at the end of last season. So I'm much happier sort of seeing a game out in that style, where you have the ball, you have the territory, and you're a little bit wasteful, than trying to defend, wave after wave of attack, and the cop end's trying to suck it in. It feels like it only ends one way. So really, really encouraging, and we're different this season, no doubt about it. We're winning games in different ways, we're getting results in different ways, but it's one of those where we sort of could last the course of the season kind of slightly better as a result of it.
Yeah, I am a little bit concerned. You mentioned the period there, the last kind of quarter of the game. It's when we made this triple substitution. So Gravenberch, Darwin Nunez, and Harvey Elliott came on for Curtis Jones, Cody Gakpo, and Luis Diaz. And I feel like, unfortunately, Ryan Gravenberch was probably the biggest culprit to us losing kind of control midfield. He seemed to lose it often. Him and Szoboszlai today seemed to just take a heavy touch or misplaced passes a lot. There was one weird one from Szoboszlai where he cut infield from the right, and then he passed it with his left foot with just no red shirts there to pass it to. And yeah, just very simple giveaways like that. I will say in our team though today, Wataru Endo. I 2 weeks ago I said we need a DM, which is still true because there isn't any other recognized defensive midfielder apart from Wataru Endo, but he's been doing his job recently.
He played well.
Yeah, played very well today. Probably one of the best 3 or 4 players on in Liverpool, considering the performances of Virgil van Dijk, who I hope he's back to his best, and he's giving me that impression. Ibrahima Konate was immense, and Trent again finding just a ridiculous pass to Salah for the second game in a week. Those 3 I think were the best 3 for us. And of course, Salah, what will we be without him, given how off form Cody Gakpo, Luis Diaz, and Darwin Nunez, even though Darwin Nunez has been doing okay-ish on the left wing recently. Salah has moved to the top 10 of all-time Premier League top goal scorers. Truly one of the greatest to ever do, and I won't hear anything else.
I
one of the greatest players of all time.
I didn't understand why he ended up going up front. I must be honest. Like, I understand wanting to maybe get him in some dangerous positions, get him in some shooting positions, but there was an obvious mismatch in that right channel. It's where you score. It's where you looked most threatening at different periods. Is that pass from Trent into Salah, just direct before we can kind of get players back and behind the ball.
And he had Zinchenko's number all game. Why move him?
No, I didn't get. I mean, I was glad he'd done it. I was much happier seeing Harvey Elliott. Good player, but he's just not. He offers different things to what Salah does in terms of sort of the directness and threat that Salah's going to offer coming off the right. I mean, the goal that Liverpool score is worth saying. It's terrible defending by Zinchenko. I just don't know what he's doing, to be honest. But
it reminded me of Trippier against who was it? Trippier
against Son.
Yeah, against Son. Yeah, Donham.
But it's worth saying. I don't think there's many players, if any, that find that pass to Salah, and I don't think there's many players in the league that do what Salah does. So it is you have to tip your hat to the actual sort of quality of what you've witnessed there. As much as it's sort of really annoying for me, but it's annoying for me because Zinchenko, I think, in the last kind of 6 to 9 months, he was, great first half of last season. Brought some stuff to the team that we just did not have whatsoever. But it clearly, in games like this, the fixture last year, the second goal Liverpool score, it's a similar sort of thing where he just gets done defending 1v1. In other games at the end of last season and this season so far, it's the defensive lapses / sort of inability to defend 1v1, which is, I think, why we signed Jurrien Timber, and I think why when he's been fit, tried to use Tomiyasu as a left back more. And it's just frustrating because I think if either of those guys are fit, and Liverpool probably said the same about having to use Joe Gomez at left back, although actually I thought he did quite well as the game went on. But
he did. Very encouraging.
It's I think in these sort of games he's third choice now for me. I think and I think the selections will bear that out when those guys come back. And from what we've seen so far this season, I think in the Champions League, the second half against Chelsea, the Newcastle game, he's played Tomiyasu when he's been fit. So that was a mismatch. I was glad they took Salah out of that channel and put him in the middle because I'm talk about the centre backs, I'm much happier watching them try to defend against him. And that's maybe the only thing I'd be a little bit critical of with the goal is, can you get someone out there quicker to sort of double up? Liverpool did it a lot with Konate and Trent. But it's a very, very good goal. And it came at a time where I think if we ride that out, I'm not saying we would have won the game, but it was a period where you're always going to have to sort of suffer a little bit. That first part of the second half. If you get through that, I think that Liverpool are tired. I just think that the fact they played last Sunday, then they've had the game in midweek that was quite intense, and they put quite a bit into that, winning 5-1. Those are the margins, but you can't complain that much. City drew to Liverpool. Liverpool have been hard to beat this season. They've had quite a lot of draws. It's well documented, not been beating the top 6 teams, but they haven't really been losing to them either. Bar a ridiculous VAR decision at Spurs, you know, and a pretty dubious red card, and a 96th minute own goal. Like, that's what it's taken for them to lose a game this season. So, like, as much as there's things that aren't perfect with Liverpool, like, I don't think this is the Liverpool of, you know, 97 and 99 points, and even the Liverpool of the Champions League final and taking it to the last day a couple of seasons ago. It's still a good side, and one of the hardest grounds to go to in the league. So,
yeah,
I find it difficult to be that annoyed with it. If we end up losing the league by 2 points or whatever, it's not because of these 2 points. Basically, there'll be other games that will have cost us.
If we end up losing the league by 2 points, I'll be annoyed. You know why? Because of this Trent miss.
Yeah,
that bubble. Yeah. Right. We have to talk about the pitch, because the pitch is responsible for the result today. 100%.
It's quite funny, isn't it? Because, like, in our group WhatsApp during the game, I mean, I noticed it a little bit in the first half, but then in that period, in the first part of the second half, where we were, like, as I said, making our own problems, there was so much, like, slipping and sliding going on. Like, you could see sort of, like, surface water on the pitch at various points. You could see that the ball wasn't, like, getting from, like, player to player. There was one in the first half as well where, like, it went through to Raya.
And then it stopped there?
It up. Like, the ball stopped, it literally stopped on the spot. I think he thought it was just going to come through to him, and sort of, you know, fortunately for him, had enough time to come out and pick it up. But I don't know if it was deliberate from Liverpool to sort of, I think, stop us trying to play the passes short. And it's something I've seen teams do. Listen, you don't expect it in a game like this. I've seen, you know, Burnley under Sean Dyche is the example I always think of. You go there, they grow the grass long, and the ball just does not travel, and it sort of suited them. Their man-to-man pressing. Now, I don't know if this was just a sort of dereliction of duty on this in this case, where it was dreadful. Like, for a game of this quality, you know, this standard, you got third v first. I can't really see how it helped Liverpool, to be honest. If it was done deliberately.
No, I don't think it was deliberate. I just think it was because this was the third game in a week, and the ground crew basically couldn't get it in a perfect condition, but it was bad. I don't think the grounds people over there would have been watching that game very happy with what was happening there. I mean, it's the bobble, Saka kind of tackle on who was it? It was like he slipped, exactly, but it could have ended a lot worse, because
it might have been Gravenberch.
It was Gravenberch.
It was a slip. He slips.
He does slip, but what ends up happening is, because he slips, he catches Gravenberch almost like knee height. If Gravenberch was a little bit shorter, it might have ended up a lot worse. And it was also responsible for the handball shout, which, like, Liverpool Twitter is rammed with outrage about that Odegaard handball.
It's definitely handball. Like, let's be absolutely clear about it. It's definitely handball.
Okay. I think he touches the ball just because he slips. I think it is handball.
It's unlucky.
Exactly, which is why I'm not upset that it's not.
It's unlucky. Like, the thing I can't sort of, like, reconcile with is that not being a penalty, but then when we play Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, Saliba has the ball headed at his arm from like literally a yard away, and that gets given as a penalty. Like, you know, I've been on about the handball law for weeks and weeks and weeks now. Like, it just doesn't. But then you've got the Havertz one a couple of weeks ago as well at Villa, where that's handball because he's an attacker.
Yeah.
But then if he's a defender, you're obviously allowed to do that. Like, it's become the interpretation of the rule has become so far from the kind of initial reason that it was obviously the handball law was brought in to stop people picking the football up and chucking it in. Like, it just needs a bit of common sense sometimes. And I just think they've tried to sort of create. We've spoke about this before on this podcast, just in general, about where they try and create like a criteria, and then they adhere to that really kind of strictly, but rather than just looking at, you know, case by case and using a bit of common sense. And I think if you look at that, like, it's unlucky, but it's a penalty. It's definitely. I'd be pretty annoyed, to be honest. It's listen, it's unfortunate. He doesn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
But his arm's out. and he kind of tackles the ball with his hand, really, because he stops it sort of like it's a good interception.
It is. It does look like it because Salah was in. Otherwise, I'm not upset that it wasn't given though. Like if VAR is a non-factor, if it doesn't exist, and this handball isn't given as a penalty, there'd be a lot less outrage because everyone would have seen the slip and would have said it's actually like there's no way he actually like goes to handle the ball. It's not. I mean, I guess it is hand to ball, but it's like it's just because of a slip because the pitch is terrible.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be
That's
upset
true.
that it wasn't given. I'm fine with it, to be honest. And there were more reasons we didn't lose, like the Trent miss, which is because the pitch was god awful.
Was bad.
Yeah,
It
it was pretty shocking. There were some funnier results that happened today. Manchester United have lost their they've lost 50% of their games so far. I found an article written by Jonathan Wilson of The Guardian. And allow me to read the the first kind of the first couple of paragraphs. This is very funny. I found it to read. And bear with, this is going to take just a couple minutes, but it's very funny. Right. The Danakil Depression is a plain approximately 125 miles long by 35 miles wide that lies at the northern end of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia. Formed by the divergence of 3 tectonic plates in the Horn of Africa, it lies 410 feet below sea level, while year-round temperatures make it the hottest place on Earth. Although it was there that the 3.2 million year old fossil Lucy was discovered in 1974, leading some to suggest it was the cradle of humanity. Its salt lakes are now widely considered the most barren place on Earth. Or at least they were until Saturday, when further evidence emerged to suggest the bleakest place on Earth, the environment most devoid of creativity and imagination and hope and joy, is Manchester United. Bit much. A little bit much. But
I was wondering where it was going, to be fair.
he's not too wrong.
No, he's not. He's not very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were rubbish. I did watch that game.
Yeah,
they were rubbish. Rubbish.
Rubbish all
Absolutely
season.
terrible.
To be honest, that they've you could probably count on one hand. It might even be on one finger, because I can only literally remember one time I've watched them this season. I thought, yeah, they were pretty good, and that was a League Cup game against Crystal Palace, right? Other than that, I'm struggling to think of one good performance in the league. I can't, and I like they've lost 8 games now. They could easily have lost more than those 8 games. And as you said, they've lost 50% of their games in all competitions, which I'm surprised it's even that low. Like, I thought it was more, because they've lost 3 in the Champions League, they've lost another one in the League Cup, obviously 8 in the league now. Terrible, like another terrible performance. The thing that frustrates me most as well, like not frustrates me, it would frustrate me if I was a Man United fan, is the continued delusion of their manager. And I get, like, you have to be a little bit coy with what you say after the game. Like, you don't want to come out and just say, yeah, they're all rubbish, they're all a bunch of, they're a waste of space and this and that. But you have to be somewhat honest and candid with your appraisal of performances. And every time I listen to him, there's a lot of sort of what would be like whataboutism in his analysis, where it's, today I think he said something along the lines of, if we score first, we would have won. And it's like, well, you didn't score first. Like, you missed a couple of chances, but that happens in football. And as the game went on, you offered nothing. West Ham scored. You offered nothing in response. That was it. West Ham scored after 70 minutes.
And that was the game.
They might as well have
a death.
blown the whistle. It just, the performances are so terrible, and his read on them is even worse. I think that's the sort of concerning thing, is like, if it gets to a point where, and I remember we had this with Unai Emery, who, I think for different reasons, it was sort of like language barrier issues mainly at the time, where he would sort of miscommunicate his thoughts about actually how we'd played in comparison to how we'd actually played, which again a lot of the time was terrible. Ten Hag hasn't got that excuse, not to be glib about it, but like he speaks perfect English, even if it is dull to listen to most of the time, right? But he
is dull.
It's so uninspiring, and I've used the word before. It's delusional. I think he's the most delusional manager in the league, if you take what he says at face value, because the performances are so bad they don't warrant any more than what they're getting over the course of the season. If anything, they could have less points than what they've got. Their underlying numbers. I saw a stat in the week, so obviously before this game, and I think it was the last 10 games. It was expected goal difference. They're 17th in the league for expected goal difference in the last 10 games. It's relegation metrics.
Wonderful.
It was like -5 expected goal difference over that 10-game period, which, that's a quarter of the season that you've played. And they've had a sort of mixed fixture schedule. They've not played the best teams in the league. They went to Anfield, but other than that, it's sort of been, there's some fodder in there, really. And yet, they're just terrible. They're just absolutely terrible. They're on any green shoots. Like, you look at that game last weekend, like, okay, the result is encouraging. It's a point. And I've just said I'm happy with a point at Anfield. But, like, there are levels to this, right? Like, going there and getting a draw in those circumstances for them was a good result. The performance was dreadful. It was absolutely terrible. There was no quality in what they did. They defended their box well. They got men behind the ball. And they had a couple of chances on the counter-attack. But like, largely it was not being able to string a pass together, and that's the theme of the season, is in and out of possession. They are dreadful when they're asked to do anything sort of adventurous. They played Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago. You expect them to beat, and you think they'll get on the front foot and play. They're wide open. You win the ball off them, and they are so there, ripe for the taking. The only way they know how to play is on the counter-attack, to get men behind the ball and to play direct. It's the same thing we were watching them do under Solskjaer. And the second he tried to get them to play a bit more adventurous, that was his undoing. And you look at it now, he's been in the job a season and a half, and there's absolutely no way he's taken the team any further than where he found it. So, listen, I hope they keep him in the job a lot longer. I think it's absolutely hilarious, the content that he's sort of providing for us weekly when he comes out. And
I mean, when we come up with lines, when we have articles like Jonathan Wilson's there, and a comparison with the Danikil depression. Yeah, keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, it's accurate. They played the last 4 games. They've not scored a goal, not looked like scoring a goal in any of those games, really.
Yeah.
And lost 3 of them. They're out of the Champions League, bottom of the group. What are they now, 8th in the table?
I will tell you that when you mentioned underlying numbers there, I got curious and looked at their, according to Understats, expected points. They are 7th bottom.
Yeah, that's about right, isn't it? Like, they're 8th and they could easily be 13th. I think that's the point, right? Like, you can be further down the table, but maybe not deserve to be where you are. Like, it happens. But even then, I think it's sort of... But yeah, they're 8th and they could be 13th, which kind of says it all with where they're trending. There's absolutely nothing... I know they've got injuries, like, I get it, and they're keen to tell us that every week. There was a few more today, like, fine. But even when they get these players back, and they're not like a silver bullet to their problems. If they'd had any encouraging performances with some of these players fit, that would be one thing. But there aren't. They have not played well in a single Premier League game this season. I'm really convinced of that.
But why, Harry? Why Eric Ten Hag was the manager of the month last month? Come on.
What was it? 3-1-0 win
games in November.
Yeah.
There was a 3-0 win at Everton.
They beat Everton. Yeah, they beat the Fulham side of the Premier League 3-0. To be fair, so give them respect. That's a good result. They didn't play well in that game. Great overhead kick. But yeah, it just, if you're a Man United fan, I'm genuinely curious, because, as I say, the performances aren't encouraging, and you're just being lied to every week, and it's almost insulting your intelligence. Like, he's like gaslighting them into sort of trying to believe the performances are better than what they actually are.
Wow.
Like, it ain't fooling anyone with a pair of eyes. It's dreadful.
Strong words. A weirder result that happened today, too, is Fulham losing 2-0 at home to Burnley. Not long ago, they won 5-0 against West Ham. Well, there were extenuating circumstances to that, but Fulham have been on okay form, decent form.
Yep. We're in
Shocking
the League
loss,
Cup
really.
to the semi-finals.
Yeah.
Weird side to get a read on Fulham. As you said, they're back-to-back 5-0 wins. They
Oh yeah, they did
went
have
to
back-to-back
Anfield
final.
and were 3-2 up with 5 minutes to go, or whatever it was, which was a pretty good performance, I thought. I think before the Wolves game, which was the game before that, they had something like 2 goals in the last 8 games. Like they were on a terrible run of scoring in the league.
Yeah, and then just
So
made it 4 in 2 games.
weird side, weird result. Good result for Burnley. It was actually a good day for the teams, or good weekend, I suppose you could call it, for the teams at the bottom. Albeit Sheffield United denied a win late on by Villa, but it's still a pretty good point for them.
Really good point. Luton
And
Town
then
won.
Burnley, obviously,
Newcastle United
and Luton
0-2.
Town beating Newcastle. So the team that I think you've now got with relegation, it's 3 from 4, isn't it? Which is what it was earlier in the season. But I think we thought it was going to be 3 from 4 of the bottom 3 at the minute, and then Bournemouth were really struggling. And all of a sudden they've hit some great form. They're well out of it, and you have to give them credit. They've sort of settled into the manager's demands, and your prediction for them suddenly looks a lot smarter. But
come on.
Forest have gone the opposite direction, gone on the slide. Obviously, Steve Cooper was sacked this week.
Replaced by
Nuno's
Nuno
first game.
Espirito Santo.
Yeah.
Former
And his
champion of
first
the
game
Saudi
today-
Pro League. It must be.
Yeah.
He's
What a CV.
He knows how to win trophies.
He does.
But yeah, lost
It's
today.
worth saying, so they end up losing 3-2 today. Massively overshadowed by possibly the worst decision of the season. Maybe, obviously, you're going to argue as a Liverpool fan, but just like this is infuriating as well, because they can't intervene because it's a second yellow, which for me, all the faffing about they do with VAR, I don't know why we've drawn the line at not being able to intervene with second yellows. Like, yeah, I agree with not being able to check, was it a corner or was it a throw-in? But like, when you're checking, is it a second yellow? I don't understand. It's still a red card. You're still taking a team down to 10 men. So there was one earlier in the season we had at Crystal Palace where Tomiyasu basically pats a guy on the back and gets a second yellow for it. There was the Palace one a couple of weeks ago against Liverpool. Like, there's been a few this season where you're just like, it's a ridiculous decision. It's exactly what VAR is there to do, overrule that sort of stuff. And it can't because of some absurd interpretation and loophole, which is that they can't review it.
Protocol.
That today is just, you'd be disgusted,
Horrendous.
really, because he's got to the ball so early that it's actually a pass. Like, he actually gets fouled. The guy stands on him. And
that's also
he's
true.
shown a second yellow for his troubles.
And it's right under his nose. That referee that sent Willie Bolly off, it's Rob Jones. I actually met him in the summer series. Had a long chat with him. Really sound guy. Incredibly tall.
Did you
very,
talk to him
very
about
big.
second yellows?
I
and
didn't
the
talk to him
interpretation
about
of
second
rules
yellows. I didn't talk to him about the interpretation of the rules. We did speak to. I did talk to him about like the kind of day-to-day life of a referee and how the dynamics work on the field, and how he was saying how like players are really nice before the game and after the game, but then during the game the adrenaline gets to them, which is
they're awful.
like exactly.
Yeah.
And we all know how bad the attitude of the players can be toward referees at times, and that's why referees don't want to, like, young people don't want to be referees anymore. And there's a worldwide shortage of referees now that FIFA launched a campaign of sorts. But that was awful. I saw the referee that did it, and I'm like, no, come on, it's not you.
It's a really bad decision, but like as I say, the thing that irritates me most with it is that these things can happen, but the fact that it would take them honestly one look at that to overrule it.
Exactly.
Like, it's so obvious,
It would take 2 seconds. He got the ball
now, in
first.
fairness, I think they are changing it. I think I think from next season, I'm pretty sure they're expanding the threshold of like stuff that can be reviewed, and I'm pretty sure that second yellows would obviously be included in that.
Are they? I think I saw that, but
I remember.
thought it was just rumors in terms of intervening
it might be
with
just
everything.
rumours.
But we'll see.
One to fact check. I don't want to be spreading misinformation here, but they if they're not reviewed, they absolutely should be, because That is just a disgrace. It's
Awful.
a terrible decision that then can't be reviewed for like reasons I literally can't explain. The other thing I can't explain, just worth mentioning in that game, is again, there's a penalty shout, the handball. It's definitely handball. I don't know how handball wasn't given. And then it comes down to, is it in the box or outside? Like, the amount of technology and funding and money that goes into the game now, why there isn't the requisite camera angle to be able to determine this, I think is just absurd. It's like the Newcastle ball going out of play. Like, why they can't check that, why they can't check this today, where we can't determine whether he's in or outside the box. All the cameras they've got, all the replays they've got access to. The
VAR decisions use like such pixelated images. It zooms in, and then you see like hollows of people, and then you're drawing lines based on pixels. It's not even the silhouette of the body.
They didn't have the angle for it today, which I just think is it's just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. I mean, how many cameras do you need? Like, also, it's sort of to do with the position of where you need a camera. You think about it, right? You definitely need one all the way along the goal line at both ends. You need one in line with the penalty box, like from the 18-yard area, and then you need one on either side, like from off the sides, because guess what, where the penalty area is an important sort of definition, so you need to know. And I just think it again is an absurd blind spot, and that if that's in the box, that's a penalty. He's handballed it, right? They're not going to overturn it because they're not sure. The fact that they're not sure is just absolutely criminal for me. And Forest, like, they're on the slide. It's looking bad for them.
And if Luton Town, because of that 94th minute winner for Dominic Solanke, if Luton Town win their game in hand against Bournemouth, they go above Nottingham Forest. So it was such an important game too that they lose, and a point would have made a huge difference. But the game week is not over. So tomorrow, you mentioned last time, Harry, for the very first time, there's a
Christmas Eve action
fixture, and it's quite early on. It's near enough lunchtime. Wolves against
giving
Chelsea.
People time to the Christmas shopping, get everything ready under the Christmas tree for the big day. Yeah, it's unheard of. So, good on them picking Chelsea. Send them up to Wolverhampton, the Chelsea boys. Have fun, lads.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's. In truth, like, all jokes aside, it's absurd scheduling. I don't know why that game couldn't have just been today, but
yeah, I don't know.
Weird. And then we got one day off, and we're back to it again. It's like they've had, I think during the festive period, they've got a game like 11 out of 12 days. I think they said the other night, because obviously the Palace game was Thursday, the Villa game last night, games today, games Sunday. Nothing Christmas, but then all of next week you got games on pretty much up until the 2nd of January.
So Boxing Day,
football coming at you
football coming at you from all angles. The Boxing Day, of course, a really few fixtures, only 5, but the 27th, 3 games. Thursday, the 28th.
There's no game on Friday night.
Games.
There's no Friday night football, actually.
No Friday night football. Interesting. And then right back at it Saturday, of course, and Sunday, and then New Year's Day with Liverpool, Newcastle, and the 2nd with West Ham, Brighton. And we will be reacting to all of that after all of that football has been played. Harry, thank you so much for the whole year, really. Obviously,
thank you for your efforts and keeping the people entertained. So it's been a pleasure. Long may it continue into the next year and beyond.
Long may it continue. Fergal and George, love you guys. So yeah, there will be the content on Just Another Full Podcast won't stop because I don't celebrate Christmas. So I'll just be sat here filming. So there will be 2 videos coming at you. One is obviously the December superlatives on New Year's Day, probably, and the other one is a best 11 with a twist. So look forward to that. It's a good exercise. It's a fun little thing. Thank you for listening, watching, subscribing, liking, everything like that this year. And on to bigger stuff next year too. 2024, here we come. Harry, thank you. Everyone, we'll see you later. I'll see you in the videos. You'll see Harry in the new year. And hopefully George and Fergal too. All right. Goodbye. Cheers. Happy holidays.